Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Toledo. Today we'll have another great meeting with our speaker, Tim Brown from TMACOG. But before we get to that, I'd like to ask Mike George to the podium to deliver a reflection and have Rob Kelligan lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. After that, would you remain standing as George Eistetter leads us in the four-way test?
Thank you. Let us pray. Dear God, let us not take for granted the gifts you have given us, the ground that brings forth bountiful harvests, the air that gives life, and the water that nurtures us all. Bless those who transport our goods from rail to port, from roadways to airways. Give them guidance and safety as they provide the means by which we receive the necessities of life. Guide our leaders to be mindful stewards of those gifts, to remember that all actions have consequences. Let us all be vigilant in how we live our daily lives and to realize the impact we have on your creation. We give thanks to you for all these abundant gifts. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now if we can all join with past President George in the four-way test.
First, is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Second, is it fair to all concerned?
Is it fair to all concerned?
Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you all. You may be seated. Thank you, Mike, Rob, and George. We appreciate that. As we begin today's meeting, I'd like to recognize this month's sponsor, Yark Automotive Group. We have no visiting Rotarians today, but if you do have a guest you would like to introduce, would you please go to the floor mic with your guest so we can hear and see you.
Mr. President, I have with me Dave Dittman, who came to one of our new member programs. I met him there and invited him back. I think he's a prospective new member. He is with Prime Erica. It's a personal finance company in Perrysburg. He's the regional manager for this area.
Thank you. Welcome.
President Dick, I have with me today Lori Brody. Lori is the mayor of Waterville and happens to be on the executive committee of TMACOG as Waterville's representative. She's also running for Lucas County Treasurer in November.
Welcome.
President Dick, I have with me today Josh Didion, who is a partner at the law firm of Marshall and Malhorn and a prospective Rotarian.
Great.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have with me today Monica Bridge of Redson Limited. She is the Director of Operations, and they offer custom software solutions for back office operations.
Good afternoon. Today I have Drew Snell with me. He is a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley.
Welcome to all of you. It's great to have you with us. We hope you enjoyed today's program. Now would be a great time to check into social media to let everyone know you were at the Rotary Club of Toledo meeting. And then I ask you to please silence your phones for the rest of today's get-together. I'd like to invite Hannah Murad to the floor mic to announce Zoo Day. this coming Friday, September 28th.
Good morning, or good afternoon, President Dick and fellow Rotarians. The Disability Committee's annual Zoo Day is coming up this Friday, September 28th. We really want to encourage all of our members, especially the new members who have not participated before, to sign up to volunteer for this event. We will meet at the zoo at 9 a.m. We'll spend the morning walking around with the students from Glendale Fieldbox School. Everyone will meet at 11:30 a.m. at the Broadway Pavilion for a picnic lunch. It's a really fun event for anyone who attends. We really encourage all members to sign up, which you can do on our website at ToledoRotary.org and scroll down at the bottom of the homepage, the link in the spoke. We hope to see you there. There's also a sign-up sheet on the front desk with Emily, so hopefully you guys will all sign up. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. I do encourage you to attend Zoo Day if you're able this Friday at 9 o'clock. It's always a great experience with the Glendale Fieldbox children. This time I'd like to invite past President Tom Backoff to the podium for an announcement about the Legacy League.
Thank you, President Dick. Fellow Rotarians, it is indeed my honor today, on behalf of the Toledo Rotary Club Foundation Board of Trustees, to speak regarding the role that we all play in our Toledo Rotary Club Foundation. First, let me say thank you. Thank you for your time, your talent, your treasure that each of you contribute to both our club and our foundation. It's your efforts that allow the Rotary Club of Toledo to achieve remarkable success. And today, I want to share with you one recent Rotary moment, a moment that makes you proud to be a Rotarian, both humbling and inspiring. That is testimony to the impact your work has on this community, our region, and frankly, the world. 2 weeks ago, the Toledo Community Foundation, the Toledo Museum of Art, and 2 Toledo Community Foundation donors made possible a showing of a documentary film called Toxic Puzzle. The film highlighted Lake Erie, the Western Lake Erie watershed, and other lakes in Ohio, and the problem of poisonous cyanobacteria throughout the world. The scientist featured in the film, Dr. Paul Cox, and the filmmaker, Bo Landine, came to Toledo as part of the showing to answer questions and to meet with the community. The film was shown free of charge at the Peristyle Theater at the museum, and Paul and Bo made a short presentation and answered questions. These men have traveled the world studying the effects of poisonous cyanobacteria and its link to increased incidence of ALS and Alzheimer's in people that are exposed to it. They came to Northwest Ohio originally in 2016, after the water crisis we experienced that shut down our water system. The film was well done, extremely intriguing, and frankly, we may all be at risk if their studies and hypotheses prove to be true. I watched the film prior to the visit and was fortunate enough to meet Paul and Bo at a luncheon the Toledo Community Foundation sponsored the day they were here. I explained my interest in their work and that I was a member of the Rotary Club of Toledo. Immediately, Paul and Bo were drawn to me because of Rotary. Dr. Paul Cox, who Time magazine named one of 11 heroes of medicine for his work in ethnobotanical drug discovery, said during the lunch that the work that the Rotary Club of Toledo had done is some of the finest he had ever seen. Both men commented on this illustration that was featured in the Rotarian magazine as the most informative graphic piece of how cyanobacteria forms in the water that they had ever seen. Dr. Cox, in his remarks, said, quote, "The issue of harmful alga blooms can be solved in Toledo. If Rotary can eradicate polio, it certainly can solve this problem, unquote. This remarkable statement, coming from a world-renowned scientist, is truly impactful. The work we do as Toledo Rotarians makes a difference. And this inspiring quote by past President Andy Stewart also appeared in the Rotarian. It speaks volumes for our commitment to solve difficult issues. Rotarians, in order to keep this amazing work going, along with other transformational projects and our traditional gifts that now total over $200,000 a year, we all need to support the Toledo Rotary Club Foundation. We can do that in a couple of ways. The first, give annually. Join the President's Club with an annual gift of $250. Second is the Legacy League, a planned gift. The Toledo Rotary Club Foundation encourages you to make a bequest. Designate an amount from your will, from an insurance policy, or from your IRA. Complete the Legacy League form that you recently received, or one that is on the table. Pick it up today, fill it out, turn it in. Any amount is welcome and appreciated. Rotarians, I cannot thank you enough. I can't thank you enough for how much you care, for the time you spend, the ingenious work you do on committees, and of course, the generous gifts you make to our foundation. You are among this community's best and brightest, and it is an honor to serve and work with you. What the Rotary Club of Toledo does is truly remarkable, and it is unique. This is an amazing organization. This club, our club, is one of the finest Rotary clubs in the world. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Tom, for that great presentation. We're going to recognize today perfect attenders in the Toledo Rotary Club. Some people ask, how can you be a perfect attender? How can you be in this room every Monday for so long? There are other ways to be a perfect attender. If you can't make a meeting here on a Monday, you can go to another club meeting anywhere in town, anywhere in the world, to keep up your perfect attendance. And that's what some of these great Rotarians have done over the years. So I'm going to introduce each one, and I would ask you to hold your applause. I'm going to have them stand up. They're all at this table up front. And then when they're all standing up, we can recognize them together and honor them as they should be. So I want to start with Dennis Isabel, who's had perfect attendance for 6 years. Thank you for not listening. Bob Harold, who's had perfect attendance for 25 years. Tom Klein, who's had perfect attendance for 25 years. He's attending, and I'm sure that Tom will be making up somewhere this week. Past President Chuck Mann, who's had perfect attendance for 28 years. Dean Roberts and Craig Roberts together have both had perfect attendance for 30 years. Past President Brad Rubini for 33 years. I got an email from Brad today. He's in Sweden and he's making up over there. Past President R.C. Young, who's had perfect attendance for 40 years. Bob Reichert, perfect attendance for 43 years. And Walt Churchill, capping it all off, perfect attendance for 50 years. If you would all stand, please all stand and be recognized. And let's all stand with them. Thank you so much. I think that kind of perfect attendance is a great testimonial to the power of Rotary and what it means to these great Rotarians. So thank you again, all of you. I want to remind everybody about Polio Plus at the Pub, which is now just a week from Wednesday, October 3rd, at the Paula Brown Shop. It's a right after work event, 5 to 7:30. We're going to have Rotarian entertainment, great food from Sidon Lebanese Grill, and just great fellowship while we get together, get to know each other, and bring attention and bring in some contributions for the polio effort throughout the world. You can get tickets right outside before next week's meeting at a table. You can get them online. You can contact me personally, and I'll make sure you get tickets, and they should be available at the door also. Housekeeping reminder, please be sure when you get your badges outside before the meeting that you scan them in one of the scanners. We have a lot of people just taking the badges, and I've done it. I know it's easy to do, but just remember to scan them after you've picked up your badge before you put it on. And you can do it on your way out if you forgot today. Reminder about the 20 under 40 gathering today at the Valentine Theater, starting at 5:30. We have 16 Toledo Rotarians who are nominated for the 20 under 40 award. I'm sure if you go tonight, you can still get into the event. I know Kathy and I will both be there, and we hope to see you there. Finally, for those of you who get the Blade or look at it online, there was a great article yesterday in the Arts and Entertainment section about Toledo Rotarian Steve Miller, who's the general manager of the Huntington Center. And if you didn't see it, please grab a copy, go online to see it. Steve's doing a great job. And Steve, I know you're here. If you wouldn't mind standing up, let's just recognize Steve for the great job he's doing over there. Back there. Toledo Rotarians make a difference every day. At this time, I'd like to invite John Clement to the podium to introduce new member Emily Skilleter.
I'm very proud to introduce today Emily Skilleter as the newest member of Toledo Rotary. I've known Emily for many years. In fact, I've known her whole life. Emily is the second oldest of our four daughters, and her roots run deep in Toledo Rotary. Her grandfather, John Clement Sr., joined Toledo Rotary in 1951 and was a member for 65 years. Her father, me, joined Rotary in 1981. Emily was hired by Rotary as executive assistant to Kathy in 2016. I'm sure you've probably gotten a few emails from Emily since then. And this July, Emily married Rotarian Dan Skilleter, the boss's son. Emily graduated from Ottawa Hills High School and then went to Kansas to become a Jayhawk. She earned a BA degree in English Studies from the University of Kansas. Emily then moved to Chicago and was hired by a web hosting company as their executive assistant. She also worked as a nanny for 4 years in Chicago. After her stint at the web hosting company, she worked as a nanny. In 2013, Emily moved back to Toledo to help her parents manage Esker sales. Emily and Dan live on Edgevale Road in Ottawa Hills. Emily enjoys traveling and drawing. She has created portraits of her nieces and nephews and her grandfather with astonishing detail and resemblance. Emily's great sense of humor keeps us all in stitches at family gathering. Emily lists her pet peeves as crowded grocery store aisles and when people pull out in front of her while driving and don't speed up. But I know from personal experience, her other pet peeve is when people say the word moist or pewter. Or pewter. Please welcome me in welcoming Emily, who I'm sure everyone knows as the newest Toledo Rotarian.
This time I'd like to invite Jim Slattery to the podium to introduce today's speaker.
Thank you, President Dick, fellow Rotarians. Today it's my pleasure to introduce Tim W. Brown, currently serving as the 5th President of the Toledo Metropolitan Area Council of Governments. Prior to serving as President of TMACOG, he was elected to 2 terms as State Representative in Ohio's 3rd House District. As State Representative, he chaired the Government Accountability and Oversight Committee. He served on the Financial Institutions, Housing and Urban Development Committee, and Health and Aging Committee. Before serving in the Ohio House of Representatives, he was elected to 4 terms as Wood County Commissioner and served as Vice President of the Board. He was elected by his colleagues around Ohio to serve as Vice President of the County Commissioners Association of Ohio. He also served on a number of committees for the CCAO, including General Government Legislative Committee, which he chaired for a number of years, the Joint Committee on Administration and Elections, and he chaired the Commissioners and Sheriff's Task Force Committee. He is also the past president of the Northwest Ohio Commissioners and Engineers Association. Preceding his appointment as commissioner in 1997, he served Northwest Ohio for 8 years as district representative of the late U.S. Congressman Paul Gillmor. It's quite a record of public service. In 2013, Brown was accepted into the Harvard Kennedy School of Government Executive Education program. He studied in Boston and graduated in the summer of 2013. Mr. Brown was selected to attend Harvard's program from hundreds of applicants all over the world and was the recipient of a fellowship through the David Bohnett Fellowship Program. Tim Brown is a 1986 graduate of Bowling Green State University's College of Business. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tim Brown.
Thank you, Jim, for the kind introduction and for the invitation to join you today. We're going to kick things off with a very brief video that Walter has all queued and ready to go. So, Walter, I'll let you take it from here.
TMACOG. 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 TMACOG.
Toledo Metropolitan Area Council of Governments.
TMACOG brings all the players to the table in the region to benefit the region so that everybody is involved and makes decisions so we can get tasks accomplished.
TMACOG, over its lifetime, has been an association. It's a council of governments. And so it isn't an entity that contacts others and says, this is what we have, how much of it do you want? We bring people together to develop a consensus on what should the priorities be in the region.
Our mission is to bring together all of these entities across jurisdictions and across our region and across our watershed to make decisions and build consensus that will have an impact on our future.
That is what TMACOG is all about. Really, our business is communication, be it transportation or water quality.
We need to talk. We need to share ideas. Because to solve the problems in the region, we all have to work together.
Everybody has equal voice if they join TMACOG.
At my first executive board meeting, I looked around and I couldn't tell you what political party any of these people were, because we were there for one reason, and that was to help our community that we represented.
When TMACOG does bring people together, all egos seem to get left at the door, and everyone is working for what's the best solution for the region.
Transportation-wise, TMACOG's involved with transit planning as well as freight planning, as well as safety planning. As far as transit planning goes, TMACOG is at the forefront with getting people around the region as best as possible, as most efficiently as possible. And we're not talking about everybody in a car. Some people don't have access to vehicles, so we encourage them to use transit. So we're trying to boost transit and always looking to better the region that way as well.
TMACOG's been working on regional water quality issues for over 30 years, working with local governments to plan for water and wastewater. More recently, we've begun working in the last 10 to 15 years with local governments to plan for stormwater that falls in their jurisdiction, making sure that it doesn't pollute our waterways. We also work on a watershed scale to address issues of agricultural runoff and habitat restoration.
What has TMACOG done in the last 50 years?
Over the past 50 years, TMACOG has been involved in numerous projects around the region, and some to date would include the McCord Road grade separation, the Chessie Circle acquisition, the Divergent Diamond Interchange on 25 and 475 in Perrysburg, as well as the Veterans Glass City Skyway Bridge.
TMACOG's been involved in a number of notable water quality related projects, including the Ottawa River restoration on campus at UT, the removal of the Highland Dam on Swan Creek, and more recently we've been working with local communities to build green infrastructure in their neighborhoods that manages stormwater and beautifies vacant lots in the center of Toledo.
They've done the 208 program for the sewage, and I know nobody likes talking about sewage and that type of thing, but it's an important thing to do, and what it offers for TMACOG.
The thing that I'm most proud of that TMACOG did was we developed the Ohio Conference on Freight. The state of Ohio now has a stronger freight focus than it did before we started this program over a decade ago.
TMACOG is the unsung hero of regional development. We've got all different types of economic development agencies, chambers of commerce, and the one constant that is always there behind the scenes helping to keep move agendas forward is TMACOG.
I love my job, and I hope that over the coming decades that I will have a role in making a measurable impact on our future.
There's just a real desire to make it a great organization for the future.
In the future, I see a strong regional transit system in the Toledo area because that's the way that the future is going, especially with the millennial generation who wants to get away from the car-centric areas. They want to be more reliable on public transportation or their bicycle or walking to places. And I think TMACOG is going to be at the forefront of that in the future.
I think the future of the Toledo Metropolitan area is very bright. A number of the projects that we have coming into play aren't just highway projects, but we're funding a number of bikeway projects currently that are helping to tie together bikeway networks throughout our region. Our roadway network is going to be vastly improved, hopefully in the next few years, with the work that's going on in projects like this on I-475 and completion of the I-75 corridor. So our region should be much easier to get around, much more attractive to economic development, and I think TMACOG has been a large part of that through both our funding efforts and our planning efforts.
Well, I hope the future is going to be built right here in the greater Toledo area with the workforce that we have, and that's one of the critical pieces that we play at Penna Career Center is providing those training opportunities for those skilled labor jobs that are going to be needed to help build and maintain that infrastructure, because it's critical that when you put any infrastructure in, you want to be able to maintain that so that you're going to get the best useful life out of that to make sure those tax dollars are being used in the best way possible.
It's always nice to see that whole path. And so the 50 years of work they came from the original concept to where they're at, and all that they've done through the years, I can't imagine what they will be doing in another 50 years.
Well, TMACOG has a great future. It's becoming more and more apparent as time goes on. You're going to hear a lot more about TMACOG.
That video is on our website if you'd like to see it again and learn how you can become a member and work with us on behalf of the region. It is a gift from BGSU and specifically WBGU for TMACOG's 50th anniversary, and we're very proud that they took the time to interview folks and gain that footage from around our region and share it with all of you. Again, thanks for the opportunity to be with you today, and thanks in particular to those of you who are from Wood County or the 3rd Ohio House District for the years you gave me the great honor and privilege of participating in our country's great democracy. Among the highlights of my life and my career was being in service to you in that way, and I'm very humbled for having had those years and that opportunity, so thank you for that. As pointed out in the video, TMACOG stands for the Toledo Metropolitan Area Council of Governments, and a metropolitan area that, of course, includes our friends and neighbors to the north in Michigan. The public, I think, as you all know today, is probably more frustrated by politics than maybe we've been in recent history in our country. We're tired of politicians who put their party first or a particular constituency ahead of the collective public good. And I think the way voting trends have occurred in the country over the past few election cycles depict that frustration. I think we feel like we should be getting a little bit more out of our public servants today than really what we're getting. And it's led to enormous frustration. But TMACOG is really home to that effort and has been for 50 years of laying partisanship and specific partisan agendas aside and communicating and educating one another and finding ways to collaborate and put our citizens in our region first. And a 50-year history of that. We're 140 members strong and growing. And tomorrow is not just being discussed at TMACOG, it's being planned, and it's being planned with your input and your voice. We were founded in 1968, as the video points out. We're celebrating our 50th all year. We're a nonpartisan regional planning organization made up predominantly of volunteers in Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan. As the video portrays, we work in transportation planning, water quality issues. We show support for our regional economic development endeavors that impact the quality of life we all share. In some states, membership in a council of governments is required by law. In Ohio, it is voluntary, and all 140 of those business interests and local governments are at the table because they want to work together. And I think that says a lot about what we've become accustomed to in Northwest Ohio as far as our public leaders at least communicating and trying to find ways to work together. We're divided into two, as the video portrays, roughly a transportation portion of our staff and operation, and then the water quality side, which has been in place since the Water Quality Act the Congress passed in the 1970s. On the transportation side, our job is to really plan roadways, rail, bike, and pedestrian accommodations in transit that will move goods, services, and people safely throughout our region. Our multimodal approach to transportation planning is required by the federal government in Wood County, Lucas County, and the 3 townships in Monroe County, Michigan. We would not get federal dollars for our infrastructure if we didn't sit down and plan it as a region. And for those who like to kick the government and smack them around a little bit, they got something right 50 years ago when they said to Toledo's and Cleveland's and Detroit's, we're not giving you federal taxpayer dollars anymore unless you plan regionally how to use that taxpayer money to encourage the free flow of citizenry and commerce throughout these major metropolitan areas in the country. So that's what we've been doing for 50 years. We have a 2045 plan that looks out that far as to the region's needs and its want list as far as infrastructure enhancement. And we have a short-term plan that looks 4 years out. Our existing 4-year plan includes about $750 million in additional road construction in the region. So the orange barrels are here to stay. And consider a couple of statistics that kind of impact what we're doing on your behalf on transportation and population growth. Over the next 30 years, we expect freight traffic in the United States will increase by about 45%. And over that same period of time, the population of the United States is expected to increase by 70 million. So increased passengers on our roads with increased freight from one end of the country to the next. Most of us complain there are too many trucks on the road today. And so imagine a 45% increase along with that other traffic. That's in part why we need to be looking at rail more significantly, as well as our port and how we transport goods. Technology is certainly altering how we may receive some goods and take some vehicles off the road. But we've got a long way to go to addressing that massive influx in traffic that is expected on our roads. Our staff of planners and engineers also compile information that our local elected officials need to set priorities. We do traffic counts, traffic studies. Sometimes we need a traffic control device, and sometimes smaller communities want to get rid of them, and we'll help them to make a case for that. Ultimately, those plans and those studies that we will do will be used to help secure federal and state dollars to help them come to fruition. Additionally, we help our region to comply with the federal government's Clean Air Act standard. You may have heard TMACOG promoting ozone action season and telling folks what they can do to help us keep emissions down. Our region has 5 testing sites that are required to test the air on a daily basis throughout the summer that helps us to meet Clean Air Act standards. We also do a gas cap testing that you may have heard of. A leaky gas cap on your vehicle can allow the evaporation of up to 2 full tanks of gas a year. That's almost unimaginable, especially as expensive as gasoline is. I don't think any of us would want to lose 2 full tanks of gas through evaporation. So we do testing, and you might be surprised that there's no correlation between the age of the vehicle. Some new vehicles have leaky gas caps. So we set up stations all around Toledo and Michigan in the summer and test those, and we will give you a free replacement gas cap if we find that yours is leaking. If we don't have one in our vast stock of gas caps, we'll give you a certificate so you can get one. Our role in water quality, as you saw in the video, is to help the region comply with government regulations to meet the Clean Water Act. We plan ahead also to protect and restore rivers and streams so that they're functioning properly. We work with groups that are trying to manage stormwater, sanitary sewers, removing sediments that are contaminated from rivers, ditches, streams, and keep pollutants in general just simply from entering our water stream. I know some of you are familiar with the Student Watershed Watch, and you saw pictures of kids in that video standing out in streams testing the water. This year, we have a record 1,000 students from the region's schools that will in October be out testing water, and then they have a summit in November where they report on their findings. The number of students sampling in our area waterways is nearly double what it was last year, and the count continues to grow. And we attribute that growth to our teachers doing increased outreach. We set dates earlier in the calendar year with which teachers could work. The teachers on our advisory committee said that the program also covers curriculum requirements in 2 areas now, both science and English, because many of those kids are going on to report on the things that they tested out in our environment. So we have volunteers from the City of Toledo, OEPA, ODNR, Scenic Rivers, Lucas Soil and Water Conservation District, and UT will be helping us with these kids on sampling day and then helping them to provide the reports on what they found. Next year, we'll be celebrating the 30th anniversary of that Student Watershed Watch program, and we're very proud of that. We'll be seeking additional partners, both monetary and in kind, to augment the program and to celebrate the tradition that we have in this area of young kids learning about the importance of our water quality issue. Our membership, as is pointed out in the video, are elected officials like Mayor Lori Brody and Councilman Tom Winooski. There may be other elected officials in the room, but those were the 2 I got to see earlier. So they and representatives of counties, villages, townships, all choose voluntarily to be at the TMACOG table. We also have members that are non-governmental, schools, colleges, businesses, special districts, and other groups who share in our goals to promote our region's strong assets and return some of those assets back to health. Some of the members include TARDA, Toledo Chamber, Metro Parks, the Port Authority, and I'm sure many of you in this room may have an affiliation through your business as well with TMACOG. Our members bring to us projects from time to time that are in that general realm of transportation or water quality. Our transportation projects are ongoing. These orange barrels I mentioned earlier are going to be around for a while, but also the roundabout. And I know some of you have strong feelings about whether you like them or not, but they're here to stay, and you're going to see more of those in the future as well. They do 2 things that help us to meet our TMACOG objectives. One is to keep traffic moving. That reduces emissions, it helps with air quality, and congestion in our areas. There's nothing more annoying than coming up to one of those long, lengthy, delayed lights when you're trying to get home from Columbus at 2 in the morning and you're sitting at a light for no reason, when you can continue through these intersection areas now if they're roundabouts. So you're going to see a lot more of those. For those of you who have been or live in the Perrysburg area, near Levis Commons, and only an engineer, I think, could come up with that design, where you're typically on one side of the road and then you get switched over to the other and then back. But that system is designed also to help reduce congestion, to keep traffic flowing, to keep our emissions down to meet Federal Clean Air Act standards. But it also does something else that's rather unique. It reduces the potential conflict points in the old intersection from about 32 areas where we can crash into one another, and reduces it down to about 8. The same is true for those roundabouts. A normal intersection, and if someone runs a stop sign at 55 miles an hour, it's likely to result in serious injury and perhaps fatality. At a roundabout, if you're doing it correctly, it's at about 15 miles an hour. You may still run into somebody, but even that potential is reduced, and you don't hear about too many deaths at 15 miles an hour. So that's the reason I think we're seeing these things happen. The other issue that you've heard a lot in the news about that we took on as a special project a few years ago is having a regional water authority. The argument that wouldn't it make sense that instead of having high rates in the suburbs for water, that we might have a uniform system where we all share in the costs equally, put the entire Toledo region and southeast Michigan on the map with sustainable level water rates to attract business and industry and for our citizens to consume. That's something that has been being worked on for several years. I think it first formally was talked about by our region's leaders 30 years ago. So it's a subject that's been around for a long, long time. The ball has been advanced further down the field because of the intense discussions by your elected leaders in the suburbs in Toledo. And thanks to the Toledo Chamber of Commerce, who took it out of TMACOG once we got it. I describe it kind of like a football game. We had the issue first and goal inside the 10-yard line, and as you all know, the fans tend to be on their feet, and they're a little more adamant when you're that close to a goal. And the discussions were probably, I would describe, intense. And the Toledo Chamber offered, we will pay for a facilitator, take it out of TMACOG and out of the fishbowl so these folks can have more pointed discussions. And the facilitator they brought in has done regional systems all around the country and had great success. So we've moved this issue as far down the field as I think we can get it at the moment. It's going to be on the ballot for Toledo voters to decide whether or not they will allow their governmental leaders to push a regional plan. And so we'll have to stay tuned on that one and see what happens at the ballot in November. Water quality, since the Toledo shutdown of our water in 2014, has been more of a focus, maybe away from the Clean Water Act standards, to the current cause. And I'm not pointing a finger at anybody, but we know through the testing that has had to be done that the primary source of the nutrients making their way down the Maumee River to Lake Erie are from agriculture. And it doesn't mean that agriculture is suddenly a bad actor and the bad guys. It's just that so much has been done through regulation in other areas that has left agriculture being the last holdout percentage component of this problem. Toledo, for example, has been mandated to spend $525 million over 12 years to deal with wastewater treatment bypass, sanitary sewer overflows, combined sewer overflows. There are 0 instances of untreated water bypass now in the city of Toledo. And you may have heard the stories years ago, and it was true that during heavy rain events, Detroit would dump millions of gallons of untreated sewage into the lake. Cities were a problem years ago, but government regulation has insisted that that percentage of contribution to the lake's health has been drastically diminished. For those of you who live in communities with overly green front lawns and your neighbors duke it out to see who gets the greenest, most pristine, weedless lawn, you've been part of the problem heretofore. But voluntarily, most of the companies that sell a lawn fertilizer product or roll a tanker into a community have taken phosphorus out of that product. They really haven't been part of the problem for the better part of 5 to 6 years now. Leaky septic systems. If you live on a 5-acre parcel out in the country and you're not properly maintaining your septic system, you're part of the problem. And that's where health departments play a role. They need more staff, though, to enforce that percentage. But all of those percentages have decreased, leaving agriculture, as you know, because this is your endeavor now to work on this issue and address it. Agriculture is about 87% of the problem. The only thing I can think of that I know that they do a little differently than maybe 30 years ago or so, those of you who have a farm background know that tile in the fields was clay, and it was heavy, it was cumbersome, it was expensive, and it was about every 200 feet in a farm field. And then somebody invented plastic tile, and it's cheaper, it's easier to install, and many farmers now have it 25 or 30 feet in the field, so that the minute rain hits their field, it gets flushed off and all those nutrients go with it to a much greater degree than ever before. And again, we can't blame agriculture. Agriculture's been doing what we've asked of them. They're producing more food on less farm fields today than they ever have before in American history. We're enjoying some of the cheapest, most bountiful food anywhere in the world. We've got so much of it, we sell it to other countries, and we turn some of it into a product that operates our vehicles. Agriculture's done exactly what we've asked of them. But those nutrients that they're putting on the fields, less fields, to drive up their outputs, to drive up their yields so they can make more money and produce more food, we now know is a pollutant that is impacting our water quality. And how do we tell farmers, you've got to make less money? Or that we all are going to have more expensive food as those products begin to decrease if we do this right? That's not going to be easy. And there are some of us who believe that it's going to take some coordinated government regulation to make that happen. And I know all my buddies and friends hate the word regulation because government sometimes oversteps its bounds and we overregulate. And we've had to walk regulations back over time. But government is the first thing we ask for when employees of a major company in America get Enroned. Government's the first thing we all ask for when we find out a product we've been feeding to our families is carcinogenic. Where was the FDA? Where was the government? And they're the first thing we ask for when we find out Roundup, which was promoted for years as being environmentally healthy. Park districts all across the country used Roundup. And now we find out it's highly cancer-causing. Where was the government? So we ask that question. So we shouldn't always think government and government regulation is bad. Sometimes, and I say capitalism, has been one of the greatest mothers of invention on our planet. But unbridled capitalism has always led to problems. We need guardrails to safeguard the public. And we may need them here. And this is where all of us come into play when we talk to our elected officials and candidates. They need to know that government regulation isn't always a bad thing. Let me give you 3 examples that are kind of core tenets of how we've resigned ourselves to produce goods in America. Somebody got the bright idea years and years ago that children shouldn't be worked long hours at an underage. So we have child labor laws. And then somebody got the bright notion that we should be able to go to work without fear of losing a limb or our lives, and the government regulated and created OSHA standards. And then a guy by the name of Richard Nixon, President of the United States, partnered with the Congress and created something called the Environmental Protection Agency. And we decided as Americans that we would allow no business or industry to raw pollute our air and our water. Those are core tenets to how we produce things in America. Yet agriculture was exempted from the Clean Water Act at its inception in the 70s. And I think we have to ask ourselves today, is that something we can continue? We need to work with agriculture, and we do that at TMACOG. We've got grant dollars for cover crops, for drainage control boxes to help keep some of that water on the field. But we need to do more. There aren't enough farmers voluntarily doing things to reduce these numbers. So I'm going to stop there, and thank you again for the opportunity to be here and talk with you a little bit about what we do. And I was told to leave a few minutes for questions, and if you'll please stand up and use the mic so everyone can hear your question, I'd be happy to answer anything that might be on your mind. Thank you.
Two quick transportation questions.
Sure.
So after you build a roundabout and an area is left in the center of the roundabout for native plantings or whatever, and it becomes completely overgrown, who is responsible for maintaining the roundabout?
Sure, good question. And our organization does all of the planning for these things. It typically will be ODOT that will fund, but they could be in a municipal jurisdiction. So if that's the case, it's up to that municipality or ODOT if it's on a state road. Whichever local jurisdiction would typically have maintained that intersection prior would be in charge of maintaining it after.
Okay. Second question, you talked about traffic congestion and timing of lights and various things like that. Is there kind of a broader push for that? Because I know as I drive around the city, there's an awful lot of intersections with no motion control devices where you get to sit at 10 p.m. and watch the light be red. Right. Or other ones that just don't seem to operate particularly well where there's no traffic coming yet the light doesn't change back.
They're expensive to have those kinds of devices, and I know most municipalities will try to move to those systems when they can afford to put them in. It's important, too, I don't know if you've ever been stuck at a stoplight behind somebody who hasn't pulled up far enough to trigger the light. Some of them are still triggered by sensors that are actually cut in to the road and the pavement, and your vehicle's metal will set that off and trigger the light. Some are activated by the cameras, the motion sensor systems. So, yeah, it makes sense to keep traffic flowing at those intersections in the downtown too, but they're expensive and they get changed out typically as communities have budgets. Yes, sir.
Could you please summarize the City of Toledo ballot language for the water, what's the word I'm looking for?
Regional water.
The regional water,
authority.
thank you.
Yeah, you know, I probably would be best not to do that. You know, TMACOG's position has been this, that we've led the horses to water, but we're not going to make them drink. Toledo and the suburbs have to decide for themselves what construct is best for them. The Toledo construct basically addresses most of the suburban concerns about an authority to look at rates, to set those rates, to have an equal voice in its governance. But the backstop, as I understand it in the proposed ballot language in Toledo, is that in the end, the Toledo City Council will decide whether they want those rates that were recommended or whether they want to do something entirely different. And I think that's a little bit of the rub that has kind of brought the suburbs to the table to discuss this to begin with, is that not this administration, but administrations in the past have passed on a higher cost for water that has gotten as high as 175% more for water in the suburbs than what somebody in Toledo pays. And then a prior mayor, who shall go nameless, decided it was Smart for Toledo to say, hey, suburb, that water we're selling you at 175% markup, if you create a job with our water, we want 40% of the income taxes your community was going to get from those jobs you created. Created enormous discontent that has brought us where we are. So, whether this passes or not, I don't know. Whether it passes and the suburbs believe it's a system that they can live with and that will be beneficial to treating all equally with equal rates is something that is for them to decide. I know the mayor of Lori Brody, the mayor of Waterville, they decided to leave Toledo's system, and I believe you ran a pipe under the Maumee River and you buy your water from Bowling Green. Bowling Green is an option for Perrysburg and Maumee. Detroit, we now know, is a viable option of water for South County Water District, just across the border in Monroe County, Michigan. They are a viable source to Sylvania. Sylvania has also spent money and engineered looking at what would it cost to create our own water treatment plant and put a pipe in Lake Erie and just do it ourselves. And then recently we learned that there's an aquifer just to the west of us that could also be a source of water. These entities could all pair up with Toledo and have one regional system, or they could fracture and go their own route. That's something you need to have a conversation with your elected officials about. What's best in the long term? What's best in the long term, ideally, would be a shared system where everybody has equalized rates and those rates are guaranteed for business and consumer alike. So we'll see if we get there. We're very hopeful. We brought everyone to the table. They've done their due diligence in studying and analyzing, and time will tell whether or not we get there. So thank you again for having me, everybody. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you, Tim, for today's very interesting program. To show our appreciation, the Toledo Rotary Club Foundation will make a donation in your name to the Rotary International Polio Plus Fund. And we'd also like to give you this book about the historical tales of Toledo as a gift. Thank you. Thank you. Please join us next week when our speakers will be Dave Gerke and Doug Mead from Toledo School of the Arts. There are no committee meetings scheduled for today. Congratulations again to our perfect attenders. We appreciate it very much. Emily, we're so glad to have you as a member. And John, thanks for bringing Emily into this world and into the Toledo Rotary Club. I'd now like to invite, and I don't have to invite anymore, he knows to be there, past President Chuck Mann.
Very much. Some of you know I'm involved in a local scout troop, and one of the things that we're teaching the younger scouts now, have been doing for the last month, is orienteering. And for those of you who don't know orienteering, it's using a compass to find your way from point A to point B. Well, in the course of teaching them about compasses, one of the things that we came across, and I found very interesting, is the history of the Tate Compass Company, which actually is Kathy's great-great-grandfather. Ulysses Tate started out as a watchmaker right around when Mr. Harris started Rotary in Evanston, Illinois, although he was in this area, and they made excellent watches, very, very fine watches. How many people have a Tate watch at home? 3 or 4? That's good. But he got to the point where they had perfected watches. They had gone as far as he could, and Ulysses said, why don't we manufacture compasses? So they started the Tate's Compass Company, and didn't last very long. They had a problem. They went and found out that the machine that they used to magnetize the needle on the compass didn't work. And they didn't find this out until there were quite a few of Tate's compasses out there being manufactured. But so it didn't work out very well, and so every time that we teach this portion, I have to tell the boys that they have to remember that time-honored phrase that says, he who has a Tate's is lost.
That's a long way to go for that. I know you're all glad you stayed over time for that. I hope you all have a great week, and remember to be servants out there so we can be the inspiration. We are adjourned.